I never thought a knock at 2 in the morning would change everything. But there I was, lying in bed, staring at my phone because sleep wasn't happening that night, when 3 sharp raps on my apartment door made my heart jump into my throat. For context, I'm Alex, 28, working remotely as a graphic designer, and I'd been living in this apartment complex for about 8 months. Quiet place, mostly young professionals, the kind of building where you smile at your neighbors in the hallway but don't really know them, except for one neighbor, Marcus. He lived directly across the hall from me, and God, I'd been nursing the most pathetic crush on him since the day he helped me carry groceries up the stairs when my bag broke open in the lobby. Marcus was everything I tried not to fall for. Straight, charming in that effortless way some guys have, with dark hair that always looked slightly messy like he'd just run his fingers through it, and these warm brown eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He worked construction, left early every morning in worn jeans and work boots, came home tired, but always managed a wave or a quick conversation about nothing in particular. Safe, friendly, neighborly. Nothing more. I'd accepted that. Really, I had. I'd gotten good at appreciating people from a distance, at taking what small interactions I could get and not wanting more. It was easier that way. Less complicated, less painful. So when I heard that knock at 2 in the morning, my first thought wasn't romantic. It was concern, maybe emergency, maybe something wrong with the building. I threw on a t-shirt over my boxer shorts, ran a hand through my hair, and checked the peephole. Marcus stood there, and even through the distorted fisheye lens, I could see something was different. He was wearing gray sweatpants and a white undershirt, barefoot, his hair more disheveled than usual. His hand came up to knock again, and I quickly opened the door before he could wake the whole floor. "Hey, sorry, I know it's late," he said, his voice lower than usual, quieter. "I heard something. From your apartment. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." My mind raced. What had he heard? I'd been listening to music earlier through headphones. Had I been talking to myself? I did that sometimes when I was working late, muttering about color palettes and client requests. Oh God, had I been doing something embarrassing? "I'm fine," I said, probably too quickly. "What did you hear?" He shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. This close, I could smell his cologne, something woody and clean that I'd caught traces of in the hallway before. "I don't know, man. It sounded like I thought maybe you were upset or something. I could hear your voice through the wall. Our bedrooms share a wall." I felt heat creep up my neck. Our bedrooms shared a wall. I'd never really thought about that, about how thin these walls might be, about what he might hear on any given night. My mind went to places it shouldn't, and I forced myself to focus. "I was probably just talking to myself," I admitted, offering a small smile. "Bad habit when I'm working late. Sorry if I woke you." "You didn't wake me," he said, and there was something in his voice I couldn't quite read. "I was already awake. When I heard your voice, I thought maybe something was wrong." We stood there in my doorway, and the silence stretched between us, not quite awkward, but charged with something I couldn't name. The hallway light cast shadows across his face, and I noticed for the first time that he looked tired, not just physically, but emotionally, like he'd been carrying something heavy. "Do you want to come in?" The words were out before I could stop them, before I could think about what a terrible idea it was to invite my straight crush into my apartment at 2 in the morning. "I was making tea anyway, can't sleep." He hesitated, and I was already preparing to backtrack, to laugh it off and say goodnight, when he nodded. "Yeah, okay, I can't sleep either." I stepped back, letting him into my space, hyper-aware of every detail he might notice. The apartment was clean enough, lived in, but not messy. My laptop was open on the coffee table, design work scattered across the screen. A few plants I was somehow managing to keep alive. Books stacked on the shelf, a mix of fiction and design theory. Nothing that screamed anything about my personal life, but nothing that hid it either. I moved to the kitchen, grateful for something to do with my hands. "I've got chamomile, green tea, or some kind of berry thing my sister sent me," I said, opening the cabinet. "Whatever you're having is fine," Marcus said, and I heard him settle onto my couch. The same couch where I'd spent countless evenings imagining scenarios exactly like this one, except in those daydreams, I was always cooler, more confident, and he was always explicitly interested. I made 2 cups of chamomile, taking longer than necessary, trying to calm my racing thoughts. When I finally joined him in the living room, he was leaning back against the cushions, his head tilted back, eyes closed. He looked vulnerable like that, unguarded in a way I'd never seen him. "Long day?" I asked, handing him the mug. He took it with both hands, opened his eyes, and looked at me. Really looked at me. "Long year, honestly." I sat in the armchair across from him, maintaining a safe distance, and wrapped my hands around my own mug. "You want to talk about it?" "That's the thing," he said, letting out a breath that was almost a laugh. "I don't think I've really talked about it. Not honestly, not with anyone." Something in his voice made me lean forward slightly. "I'm a pretty good listener, and it's 2 in the morning. There's something about this time of night that makes it easier to say things, I think. Like the regular rules don't apply." He smiled at that, a real smile that reached his eyes. "Yeah, maybe you're right." He took a sip of tea, then set the mug down on the coffee table. "Can I ask you something?" My heart rate picked up. "Sure." "You ever feel like you're living your life for other people? Like you've built this whole version of yourself based on what everyone expects, and then one day you wake up and realize you don't even know who you actually are?" I wasn't expecting that. The vulnerability in his voice, the rawness of the question. "Yeah," I said softly. "Yeah, I've felt that." "How did you figure it out? How did you find yourself again?" I thought about my own journey coming out in college, the years of hiding before that, the freedom and terror of finally being honest. "I stopped lying," I said finally, even when the truth was scary, even when I thought it might cost me everything. I just started being honest, first with myself, then with other people. He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes fixed on his hands. "I've been lying for a long time," he said, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. I waited, not pushing, barely breathing. "I had a girlfriend," he continued, "for 3 years. Everyone loved us together. My family, my friends, my coworkers. We were supposed to get married. She wanted to, was dropping hints about rings and venues. And I kept putting it off, finding excuses, telling myself I just wasn't ready yet." "What happened?" I asked gently. "She figured it out before I did," he said, and there was pain in his voice. "She asked me point blank if I was in love with her or in love with the idea of being normal, and I couldn't answer. I couldn't look her in the eye and tell her I loved her the way she deserved. So she left. That was 4 months ago." My chest ached for him, for the pain in his voice, for the courage it took to admit this. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," he said, looking up at me. "She did me a favor. She forced me to face something I'd been running from my whole life." He paused, his jaw working like he was trying to find the right words. "Alex, I heard you tonight, through the wall, and it wasn't the first time." My blood went cold. "What?" "I've heard you on the phone sometimes, talking to friends about dates, about guys you've met. I've heard music playing, heard you singing along. And tonight, I heard you laughing at something on your laptop. Just living your life, being yourself. And I just..." He ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. "I couldn't stop thinking about how easy you make it look, how comfortable you are with who you are." "It's not always easy," I said, my voice rough. "It took a long time to get here." "But you did it," he said, leaning forward. "You're living honestly, and I'm still lying, even now that she's gone. I'm still pretending at work with my family, with everyone except..." "Except?" "Except right now," he finished. "Except with you at 2 in the morning, when it feels like maybe I can finally tell the truth." The air between us felt electric. I set my mug down because my hands were shaking. "What truth, Marcus?" He stood up, started pacing my small living room. "I noticed you the day you moved in. You were carrying boxes, wearing this ridiculous t-shirt with paint stains on it, and you smiled at me. And I thought..." He stopped, his back to me. "I thought things I wasn't supposed to think. About a guy, about my neighbor, about someone I barely knew." I couldn't breathe. This wasn't happening. This was one of my daydreams. It had to be. "Then I got to know you a little," he continued, turning to face me. "Just hallway conversations, nothing deep, but enough to realize you were kind and funny and creative. And I kept finding excuses to run into you, taking my trash out when I heard your door open, checking my mail 5 times a day hoping you'd be there. I felt like a teenager with a crush, except I was a grown man who was supposed to be straight and in a relationship. Marcus, I said, standing up because I needed to be at his level, needed to ground this conversation in reality. Are you saying... I'm saying I didn't really hear something concerning tonight, he interrupted. I heard you laugh, and I'd been lying in bed for hours, staring at the ceiling, thinking about my life and how I'm wasting it being afraid. And I used it as an excuse to knock on your door because I couldn't go one more day without being honest with at least one person. He took a step closer. I'm attracted to you, Alex. I have been since the day we met, and I'm terrified, and I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm probably screwing this up completely, but I needed you to know. I stood there, every fantasy I'd ever had colliding with reality in a way that felt too big, too overwhelming. You're not screwing it up, I managed to say, but Marcus, this is a big deal. This is your whole life changing. You can't make decisions like this at 2 a.m. because you're tired of lying. Why not? He asked, and there was a challenge in his voice now, something desperate and brave. When is the right time? When I've wasted another year, another 3 years, when I'm 40 and still pretending to be someone I'm not? I don't want to be an experiment, I said, and the words hurt coming out. I don't want to be the guy you use to figure yourself out and then regret in the morning. His face fell. That's not what this is. How do you know? I asked, and I could hear the vulnerability in my own voice now. You said it yourself. You're just starting to figure this out. I've been where you are, Marcus. I know how confusing it is, how desperate you feel to understand yourself. But I also know that I've spent years building a life where I don't have to hide, and I can't go back into any kind of closet, even temporarily, even for someone I really like. I'm not asking you to hide, he said firmly. I'm asking you to give me a chance to be honest for once in my life. We stood there 3 feet apart, and I could feel the weight of the moment. This was one of those crossroads you read about, where a decision made right now could change everything. What do you want from me? I asked quietly. I want to get to know you, he said. Really know you. Not just hallway small talk. I want to take you to dinner. I want to hear about your work and your family and what keeps you up at night. I want to see if this thing I feel is real, if it could be something. And if people find out, your family, your work friends? He was quiet for a moment, and I could see him processing the question, facing the reality of what he was asking for. Then they find out, he said finally. I'm done living for other people's expectations. It's cost me too much already. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. But I'd seen this before, friends who'd gotten involved with guys who were just coming out, the inevitable hurt when reality set in, and the closet looked safer than the light. I need you to be sure, I said. Not tonight, not in this moment, but really sure. Because if we do this, if we try this, I'm all in. That's how I work. I don't do casual. I don't do secret. I don't do maybe. I know, he said, and he took another step closer. I've been watching you for months, Alex. I know you're all in kind of person. It's one of the things He stopped himself, smiled slightly. It's one of the many things I've noticed about you. Tell me one thing, I said, my heart pounding. One true thing about yourself that you've never told anyone. He didn't hesitate. I used to pray for it to go away. When I was younger, every time I felt attracted to a guy, I'd pray that night that God would fix me, make me normal. And then I'd wake up the next day and nothing had changed, and I'd feel like I was broken, like there was something fundamentally wrong with me. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. It took me until now to realize that maybe nothing needs to be fixed. Maybe I've been whole all along. Something broke open in my chest. I closed the distance between us, reached out and took his hand. His fingers intertwined with mine immediately, holding on like I was an anchor. I'm scared, he whispered. Me too, I admitted, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we're supposed to be a little scared of things that matter. He looked down at our joined hands, then back up at me. Can I kiss you? I should have said no. Should have told him to go home, think about it, come back when he was sure. Should have protected myself from the possibility of heartbreak. But standing there, looking into his eyes, seeing his vulnerability and courage, I couldn't. Yeah, I breathed. Yeah, you can. He leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to change my mind, and then his lips were on mine, soft and uncertain and perfect. It was a careful kiss, a question more than a statement, and I answered by stepping closer, my free hand coming up to his chest, where I could feel his heart racing as fast as mine. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "Okay," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "Okay, that was..." "Yeah," I agreed, because I didn't have words either. We stood there for a long moment, just breathing together, and then he pulled back slightly, still holding my hand. "I should probably go," he said reluctantly. "It's late, and I have work in the morning, and I think I need to process everything that just happened." "Probably a good idea," I said, even though I didn't want him to leave. He walked to the door and I followed, still holding his hand until the last possible moment. At the threshold, he turned back. "Tomorrow," he said. "Can I take you to dinner tomorrow? Somewhere public, somewhere real. A date." The word hung in the air between us, full of promise and possibility. "A date," I repeated, testing how it felt. "Yeah, I'd like that." 7 o'clock? I'll come knock on your door properly this time, not at 2 in the morning with a flimsy excuse. I laughed. It was a pretty flimsy excuse. "I panicked," he admitted with a grin. "I'd been building up the courage for hours, and then I just went for it before I could talk myself out of it." "I'm glad you did," I said softly. He squeezed my hand one more time, then let go and stepped into the hallway. "Good night, Alex." "Good night, Marcus." I watched him cross the hall to his apartment, watched him unlock his door and pause before going in. He looked back at me one more time, smiled that smile that had been undoing me for months, and disappeared inside. I closed my door and leaned against it, my mind reeling. Had that really just happened? I looked at my phone. 2:47 in the morning. Less than an hour ago, I'd been lying in bed, scrolling mindlessly, convinced that nothing interesting ever happened to me. And now, everything had changed. I couldn't sleep after that. I tried, but my mind kept replaying every moment, every word, the feeling of his hand in mine, the taste of his lips. Instead, I made more tea and sat by my window, watching the city lights and thinking about courage. His courage to knock on my door, to tell the truth after years of hiding. My courage to let him in, to risk getting hurt for the possibility of something real. The next day dragged by impossibly slowly. I tried to work, but I kept checking the clock, counting down the hours until 7. I changed my outfit 3 times, wanting to look nice, but not like I was trying too hard. I tidied my apartment even though we wouldn't be here. I was nervous in a way I hadn't been in years, like a first date when you're 16 and everything feels monumental. At 6:55, I was ready. At 6:58, I started to worry he'd changed his mind. At 7, exactly, there was a knock on my door. He was wearing dark jeans and a button-down shirt, his hair still damp from a shower, and he was holding a single sunflower. "I didn't know what kind of flowers you liked," he said, looking endearingly nervous. "But I passed a flower stand on the way home from work, and these looked happy." I took the flower, feeling warmth spread through my chest. "It's perfect. Come in for a second while I put it in water." He followed me in, and I found a vase, filled it, placed the sunflower in it. When I turned around, he was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "What?" I asked. "I was just thinking," he said, "about how I almost didn't knock last night, how close I came to just going back to bed, staying safe, keeping everything the same. And then I thought about what I would have missed." He gestured around my apartment at the moment we were in. "All of this." "We haven't even gone to dinner yet," I said with a smile. "Don't get ahead of yourself." "Too late," he said, grinning. "I'm already ahead of myself. I'm already thinking about next week, next month. I'm already wondering if this is the beginning of something that matters." "One date at a time," I said, but I was smiling too, feeling the same hope, the same possibility. We went to a small Italian place downtown, nothing fancy, but warm and intimate. We talked for hours, real conversation, learning each other beyond surface level. He told me about growing up in a small town, about the pressure to be a certain kind of man, about the first time he realized he was attracted to his best friend in high school, and how he'd buried it so deep, he almost convinced himself it wasn't real. I told him about coming out in college, about my family's journey to acceptance, about the freedom and loneliness of being openly gay in a world that's still figuring out how to make space for people like us. "Do you regret it?" he asked at one point. "Coming out, dealing with everything that came with it?" "Never," I said without hesitation. "It was hard, yeah. I lost some people I thought would always be there, but I gained myself, and that's worth everything." He nodded slowly, processing. "That's what I want. Myself. Finally." We walked home slowly, taking the long way, neither of us wanting the night to end. When we reached our building, we stood in the lobby, and he took my hand again, that same gesture that already felt familiar and right. "I had a really good time," he said. "Me too. Can we do this again, soon?" "I'd like that." He walked me to my door, and there was that moment, that end-of-date moment, where you both know what could happen next. He leaned in, kissed me softly, sweetly, and then pulled back with a smile. "Good night, Alex." "Good night, Marcus." That was 3 months ago, 3 months of dinners and late-night conversations and slowly building something real. It hasn't all been easy. He's still figuring things out, still occasionally gets scared when we're out in public, still working on coming out to his family. But he's trying, genuinely trying, and I can see him becoming more comfortable in his own skin every day. Last week, he took my hand while we were walking through the grocery store, just reached over and intertwined our fingers like it was the most natural thing in the world. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. It meant he was choosing visibility, choosing honesty, choosing us. We still live across the hall from each other, though we joke about how we should probably just pick one apartment and sublet the other. We're not there yet, but maybe someday. For now, I like having my space and knowing he's right there, just a few steps away. Sometimes I think about that night, that 2 a.m., knock that changed everything. How close we both came to staying safe, staying hidden, staying in our separate apartments with our separate lives, how one moment of courage created a cascade of possibility. That's what I want people to know, I guess. That it's never too late to be honest. It's never too late to knock on the door, to take the risk, to reach for what you really want. Yes, it's scary. Yes, you might get hurt, but you might also find something beautiful, something real, something worth every moment of fear. Marcus knocked on my door at 2 a.m. and changed both of our lives, and I'm so grateful he did. Total char count, 24,847.